This conference will now be recorded.
So
That's
I'm
what the
talking.
president.
Y'all ready?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the way it normally works. Yeah.
Pick Adam up the other day.
Oh.
Adam goes to that school over there for fellowship. Baptist.
Uh-huh.
So preschool.
How are you
I
traveling?
went to pick him up. Yeah, we got the. I said, where do you go? She said, your son. He's the bad kid. He said, my son. I said, yeah, your son.
What's he for?
Three. It's just, they can say terrible twos all they want. When they come to reach,
Yeah, my daughter said, she taught school, she says, Mom, there's no terrible 2s and 3s and 4s. It goes up to 5, 6, 7, 8.
I'll tell you what, it's like trying to hit a mountain lion.
That's quite the saying. It is.
My 3-year-old is, yeah.
He said it's like trying to cut a mountain lion.
I know that. I like that. That's pretty good.
That makes him gutsy.
Charlotte, how are you doing this evening, Clay?
Jim,
All right,
good to
how
see
are
you.
you?
Hey, Jim.
Testing, test, 1, 2.
Yeah. All right. I'd like to call the Board of Supervisors meeting to order. As always, let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. We do have a quorum. We do need to adopt an agenda. Anything we need to add to the agenda this afternoon? Anybody have anything?
No, sir,
Weekly.
Mr. Chairman. No, sir.
It's a pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. As always, public comment. Public comment.
Is this on?
Yes, ma'am.
Eleanor Montgomery. I attended the last Board of Supervisors meeting when you all were talking about RSA and the EDUs. it was proposed at that time by the person with the RSA that we build a larger septic sewer plant. But that would entail 400 more EDUs. According to what some people in the audience had to say that night, outside developers are ready to pounce on those. And they are going to be sold at a first come, first served basis. If developers get a hold of those EDUs, we're going to end up like Culpeper. It'll be increased sheriff's office, medical, schooling, taxes. So please consider very carefully what we do with the EDUs. Secondly, thank you as a board because you are very nice about having the meetings when you do, one at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, another one at 6, and allowing us to speak. Thank you.
Hi, Ms. Montgomery, you want to tell us real quick about what you told the school board last night about the art contest, would you?
Yeah.
I apologize. Although it was good to hear.
A group called Madison Cares, and with the support of the American Legion Auxiliary in Madison, sponsored the Constitution Day Art Project, which is a product of Godart, can't remember, Institute, and that's part of the Library Association. In 2013, they had 30,000 contestants, and Patrick Corbin, in a 12th grader in Madison, won first place. So we had over 400 students who contributed their artwork, kindergartners through 12th grade, and it was delightful. So we're waiting to hear what's going to happen, but it's a way of teaching about the Constitution. So.
Thank you. All right, other public comment? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Tammy Gear. Some of you may know me as Tammy Henshaw from years ago. I live on Route 605 in Madison County, which has now been officially named Parish Road back when we did the 911 emergency system. I've lived there pretty much my entire life, and I was born in 78. My daddy built the house in 81 to 82. I have never moved from this residence. Some chuckle when you hear that when I turned 18, my parents moved out. So I'm here today to officially bring to your attention the concerns relating to State Route 605, the condition and the upkeep of this road. Parish Road has been used for a road in the past that very rarely got traveled. Being a resident of this dwelling of 73 Parish Road, I have seen the changes and the increased need to fix and upkeep this roadway. I've lived in Novum, and I live off of Novum Road. I am a farming family. And when you turn from Novum Road onto Parish Road, the road used to be a hard surface for about 50 to 75 yards off of the intersection. Because of the hard surface being transformed into more of a gravel road with the dust, the break used to take place right at my mailbox. Now, because of erosion, we have about 3 inches of dirt that has slid from the base of the hill out and extends about halfway down to the stop sign, creating potholes and damaging vehicles or farm equipment. The sides of the roads used to be nice and grassy. The ditches used to be pulled. However, now they're not. The gravel road continues all the way back to the Culpeper County line, and back at some distance behind the house, it actually intersects with Mitchell Mountain Road, which double backs around to Novum Road. About 150 yards or so, the Novum Cemetery is crested atop the hill. And then another 40 yards or so, it introduces a tree line, which typically shadows the road. The road has now become predominantly traveled, and the increased damage that's being done to the road is crazy. I have continued to make VDOT requests ever since my adult life for them to do dust suppression all the time to come out and upkeep the road. It has now become an issue with getting dust suppression put on the road. I have asked and I am bringing forth my concerns to you as a board of Madison County to please look at, number one, a quick remedy for the road, and number two, possibly putting it on the 6-year plan. We would like to see the road with a hard surface. And when I say we, I have already spoke to some of the residents, which there's very few. However, our corridor is being used for a lot of people that wish to go to the Slate Mills area, or they like to roundabout back home and not use 522. We also have some building that is occurring. So we have larger vehicles that are going up behind the house, Jake brakes, dump trucks. The weight, the school bus traffic, the narrowness of this road has just gotten unbearable. So I'm asking you if we can consider a quick remedy so we have no more gravel dust, no more days to ignore my dust suppression request through VDOT, no more days of standing water, no more days of the potholes that are large enough to damage farm equipment, vehicles, travel in the corridor. I'm asking you to also realize that every time it rains, the motor grader, and again, I have a great relationship with a lot of people in VDOT because I'm a Madison County girl. Mr. Weaver comes with the motor grader, God love his soul, but he scrapes all new gravel right to the ditch line. Then when there's dust suppression, it seems like they're always planned right before a storm, and it does not hold up. So my latest and greatest request of September 24th, I talked to Jeff Garr last year, and he said, hey, Tammy, never put in the request after October because it weakens the gravel road. It weakens the stability and the surface. So I put in the request only for it to be closed again, but no contact made. They're not putting any more dust suppression on the road this year. So I would like to see, because what they do is they put in 27A, which is like a gravel dust. That just gets washed away, and then it's literally, I cannot see from one side of this room to the other when a vehicle travels up beside my house. I would like to see if we can do a quick remedy to see if they'll put 57s, actual true gravel on the road. Let it crush down into the road, the pavement itself. Then, after we look at that, from the stop sign up past the cemetery, because there's a lot of traffic now going to the cemetery. Unfortunately, there is. See if we can extend that 57s or at least true rock to the tree line. Then we'll see what happens.
Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you.
What we do normally with these, Jonathan, you talk to VDOT and see what you can get going on.
I wanted to, and thanks, Ms. Gear, for coming in tonight. I talked a little bit about your process, a 6-year plan, and I even looked a little bit in the GIS, not assuming when someone would build, but there's a lot of carved out lots. If you go on GIS and look at Parish Road beyond her residence, kind of as the road turns. So I'm sure traffic will only increase. It's one thing, I can certainly make the request for any chloride, any dust suppression, but if the board so chooses to consider a 6-year road plan, I inform Ms. Gear, you normally do that around April or so to formally make that request. And she's certainly welcome to come back in March or April to do that. But really to put it on your radar and provide any direction you would like to see at the appropriate time. So far as ongoing maintenance, before a decision is made on the 6-year road plan, if there's any potholes, anything like that, I'll ride out there and we can definitely make sure that maintenance is ongoing. The 6-year road process, and then the number can be deceiving because it's based on funds available and when they fully fund that project. But again, every year the board reviews their current 6-year plan and takes any recommendations or consideration to either add or remove roads. So I heard the request of paving. Certainly, if there's ongoing maintenance issues now, such as potholes, I will speak to Ms. Shepherd to get those addressed.
There you go. So you want to talk to her, see if you can get some potholes filled in and maybe some dust issues or some.
And we can ask for an ADT
Yeah.
just to get a current traffic count if they don't have something from recent. Sometimes those traffic counts can go back 10 years. Sometimes it's within a couple years.
That worked for everybody.
Yeah, so hey, Jonathan, the rural rustic program, that doesn't really accelerate anything, does it?
In my opinion, it stretches the dollars. It could expedite as far as we've done that. Booton's Lane, I can't remember if it was Shiflett's Corner or out that way. That was done.
still part of 6-year
It-
plan. It's a different way of maintaining the road.
Correct. It will allow your dollar to stretch a little further. You've added some roads via choice of the rural rustic program.
Quicker way to get it paved.
Yes, sir.
But, yeah, okay.
All right. Other public comment. Other public comment. All right. Moving on. We have well, we're a little out of order. All right. Let's do constitutional officers, county departments, committees, and organizations. Mooney, Jonathan's gonna hand you the mic. Just stay there and pass it around.
Good afternoon, board. So we got the roof completed at Commonwealth Attorney's Office. It looks great. We also got the HVAC fixed at the animal shelter. They came in, done a great job, came in, came out, and that is completed. We are now working on some issues with the trees around that need some attention. We got a couple dead trees that need some serious attention for safety concerns. We also ordered our Christmas lights so we can begin to decorate probably at the middle of November. Don't turn nothing on until 1st of December. So we're on a ball, just trying to continue to roll.
Talk about the trees for a second, because Madison County hates when you cut down any tree of any type. Which trees are you doing? You got some kind of plan on replacing them?
So,
And why are you cutting them down? With Adam Downing's recommendation, I
yes.
understand.
So I talked to Mr. Downing. He sent me a couple of emails on a couple issues of trees. One tree is going to be a big issue. That is the tree at Beasley Park. The thing is dead, but if we want people to go in there and sit there and enjoy lunch and stuff, then we're going to have to remove those trees, remove the one tree and take out the dead limbs of the other trees because they are definitely a hazard to the public. We're planning on taking it down and replacing it with something else. I don't want to take it out and not just do anything. We have a tree out here. It's a pine tree that's showing the signs of being dead. The top is already dead. We're just going to take that one out right now. Then we can regroup and figure out what we want to do to decorate the area with a different type of native tree. I like to use the native trees because, that's what we should be doing here.
All right. Anybody got any questions? Everybody here that we're cutting down a handful of trees. We got a replacement plan though. There you go.
What about the one at Washington Circle that the town
The-
was talking
There you
about? Is
go.
that still on the
Washington Circle is still on
chopping
radar.
block?
I'm still
That's a
trying
terrible way to say it.
What we plan
Oh,
what we plan on doing is trying to relocate that tree. That tree is still thriving, so we're gonna try to relocate that one somewhere. But I'm trying to get bids together. It's hard getting contractors out at the heat of the moment. We probably need to do that around winter time when the contractors and road contractors slow down because we gotta have to do some paving in that area.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
we did check with VDOT, and that is out of their right of way. So I wanted to make sure there wasn't something going on there where we had to get permits through them. So it is out of their right of way. It's just getting the contractors quotes, as Mooney just mentioned. If back to the trees, if there's anything in particular you'd like to see, just let us know over the next 30 days, please. I thought it was important that Mooney got the advice of our forestry experts, so folks know I'm very sensitive to the Days of War Memorial.
don't
I-
worry. We'll tell you once you cut them down.
All right, but I want the public to know that we are, even if it's things that we see, we're not willy-nilly cutting down trees. We've got the experts' opinion on that, and we will look to replant. So if there's anything that you all would like to see or any kind of dedication of a tree named after someone, just please let us know.
Thank you. Thank you, man. Ms. Warren?
Good evening.
Yes, ma'am.
Finance is super busy. One of the biggest items on our plate is obviously the ERP implementation. And tonight there is going to be an update from Mr. Tom Char. I am also working on the budget aspect of the ERP implementation. I'll be providing that to you at an upcoming board meeting. We're also working through fiscal year 22 audit, pre-audit and audit work, and also a lot of new workflow processes in the finance team. So those are the three biggest updates right now for you.
Any questions for Ms. Warren? Thank you, ma'am. And if you'd hand it back to Ms. Lauk back there, I appreciate it. How are the courts, Mrs. Lauk?
Hi. So the court has been busy. We've had court, I think it was 5 times in September, 6 times in September. But as far as recordings, we've been down a little bit. We only recorded 164 instruments. We did 34 concealed handguns and 12 civil cases. We remitted to the state $46,707, and we remitted to the county $20,671. As I told you before, we began the e-recording, we did the training, and surprisingly, the very next day we had 1, and the next day we had 2, and by Friday we had done 28 e-recordings, and that's been steady. Every day we've done e-recordings. It kind of surprised me, but I think it's been a good thing. Our marriage kiosk is up and running, and we've already done one of those, and I will attend a fall regional this month.
All right. Questions, Ms. Lauk? All right. Thank you. Celine, are you representing Mrs. Miller?
Valerie, yeah.
Valerie? All right. All right. Passing on over to somebody in the back. There you go. Ligon.
Hey.
Howdy.
How you doing? So just an update on public hearings. In November, we will have several, but the most significant one, I guess, will be the Ford shop glamping proposal. Working on conditions now that I'll have by Friday as a draft that everyone can look at. If you're, if you get to the point November 2nd and you're inclined to vote either way, at least you'll have a set of conditions to contemplate. And they're going to be very similar to what we did with Criggersville and also with Crestaway a couple of years ago. So kind of the same sort of issues and things that we would put forth as conditions. The solar project is with our staffing, and probably know that we are now down back to our permit technician. So that's unfortunate, but I understand. So I just have told the solar folks, we just don't have the hours in the day to kind of analyze things, and I don't think they're in a huge rush. So right now, that at minimum, looking at maybe December before we see that proposal. Other than that, we're quite busy on the permit side. I know we're going to have a few places on the agenda to talk about those things here later in the meeting. I will have to step out about 5, so I do apologize. Hopefully I'm not around, but any questions for me otherwise? I know we just left the meeting a few hours ago. Right. But,
Anybody got any questions for Ligon? Ligon, thank you.
Okay.
Pass it back to Gavin, would you? Gavin?
Good evening. I've got 2 reports for you, one for emergency management, and I'll also be doing Noah's report for EMS. So we'll start with emergency management. We did receive a $2,100 REPP grant from Dominion for radiological preparedness and response. Going to use that money to put some odds and ends into the mass casualty trailer, be a generator, some other items for that purpose. So that was 100%. So no matching funds needed on that. So that worked out very nicely. We've had our last LEPC meeting for the year. The next one will be in January. Hope to be announcing that date fairly soon. We'll probably be changing the location to the firehouse moving forward for that. We think that might be a easier spot to meet, where we can meet more of in a round table type of setting. Probably stick with a quarterly meeting schedule for next year, and work with subgroups. For instance, a public safety subgroup would meet independently and then report back to the LEPC. Maybe a citizen involvement group, health and safety group, so forth and so on. So we're looking to kind of flesh that idea out and work on that a little bit as we go into January to see what that might look like going forward. Also looking at other models in other counties and other areas within the Commonwealth. Capability assessment process. That's something I want to begin in earnest. I think this is probably the number one area I want to focus on for my role as emergency manager, is to really look at what we have in the county. We've done this in the past. We usually do it every 4 years as part of the EOP. But I want to do this using the VDEM process to go through and really look at what we have to bring to bear in an emergency, look for any gaps that are there as well, and identify those, and so that we can begin to work on them. But with that assessment, that also allows us to start working on exercises and testing what we have. And again, it's a cycle that you work through. So I want to come up with a process on that is always in process. And then rounding it up here, Brian and I will be traveling next week to Texas for the all hazards training. We just had 2 people come back from that did this training in September, and by all counts was a phenomenal training experience for them. By the time Brian and I do that, it'll give us 4 of us in the county that have been trained at this level. And it's going to be a great benefit to our county should we ever have a major emergency, but even within the minor emergencies, if we ever have to activate an ICS format in our incident command. And there are a number of grants that have recently been announced. One of them today was the shelter upgrade grant. So we'll be looking to have some conversations on that. Might be able to get a generator for the high school possibly, or other areas. So we're working on that process. And that's it for emergency management. I'm happy to answer any questions on that before we move to EMS.
Anybody? Let's go to EMS.
Okay. All right. Short and sweet, 145 calls that were toned. Average response time was 9 minutes. Greene County requested mutual aid 3 times. We were not able to answer. Orange County 5 times. We did respond twice. Culpeper 1 time. We were not able to respond. We are fully staffed as of this time. However, we do have 1 person out on extended leave due to a stroke. So we hope to have him back soon. He's making excellent recovery. So we ask that you keep him in our prayers. Division Chief Ham also completed the education coordinator program. So that does give us 3 education coordinators within EMS. That's pretty much the highest level of education training that you could have through OEMS. So that's a great benefit. EMS standby events. Madison County has provided coverage for the Taste of the Mountains Festival, 4 high school football games, 3 Woodbury Forest events, football and cross country, and the Madison County Volunteer Fire Company training burn. And then we've done the first of the 3 weekends for Grays Mountain Lodge. I'll add that in there too. So far uneventful. So we like that. And we are in the process of our strategic planning for our 5-year strategic plan. It's underway. Noah's goal is to have this completed by the end of the year. And again, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Anybody? Thank you, Gavin.
All right. Thank you.
Brian?
We're all worried about Tracy.
Thanks.
Oh, all right.
I was not prepared for that. Well, while we have Connie here, I was going to talk about events, and seeing Celine made me think of another event that's going to be, I guess, this address for Thursday for the Domestic Abuse Awareness Month for October. Light Up the Night from 6 to 8 p.m. It's a really great event. And for these and all other events, go to madisonva.com. And Connie, who's here, happens to be here tonight, works on that extensively. So I'd like to thank her publicly for doing that and getting it out in constant contact emails for everybody's events in the county.
Good work, Connie. Good work. That is the way to be. All right.
I mean, we're still up as far as speaking on the website. Our normal average is about 6,000 hits a month, and we're still at 13,000. So attributed to fall foliage and all of those events going on. Tomorrow I'll be at the Quad County Business Summit, which is Shenandoah Crossings or Blue Green Resorts. We don't have anybody participating as far as the quad tank trying to get the money. We had a couple people that were real close but weren't ready to pull the trigger yet. But the winner of that will get $6,000 for that. There's a chamber mixer at Mad Vines for Virginia Wine Month, and that is on Monday the 17th from 4:30 to 6:30. If you're not a chamber member and you'd like to come, just let us know. And also, if you're not familiar with Mad Vines, it's where Shenandoah Hills Campground was. They now have 100 RV sites and 11 cabins on 35 acres, just for your information for that one. Virginia Career Works, which is a part of the Central Virginia Partnership for Economic Development, did help 12 of our residents since July. And I sent over the state tourism press release for 2021. We saw a 37% increase, which is basically recovery from 2020. And since we're talking about trees, another possible tree, instead of getting one from Spruce Rock for the Christmas parade and lighting, possibly the tourism top fund would pay for it, and either Greenscapes or maybe we can get one from Spruce Rock, but they're talking no taller than 25 feet. So it wouldn't get unruly like the one before did. We had spoken about that before, just putting it out there.
The one we had last year was over 25 feet?
No, it was not.
Yeah, about to say.
But and it wouldn't be the one wherever we plant it. It's obviously not going to be that large either, but
Okay.
just to have something more permanent if we choose to do so. And we'll do the tree lighting. Mountain View Church now wants to do some of the hot cocoa and cookies. And on the other end of town, trying to combine everything into live nativity at Beth Carr, and they will also have cookies and hot cocoa after the parade. So to kind of keep it going.
Lots of opportunities for that type of stuff. Good.
Yes.
All right. What else you got?
Lots of other events. Like I said, just go to the website for that.
All right. Anybody got any questions for Tracy? Keep up the good work.
Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, I guess since Tracy has it on the screen, is that something the board would like to see? I mean, I know it seems like a simple request, but we used to decorate what was there. And again, that tree, was cut down years ago because it was diseased. But if you'd like to see one planted in the future, every year we're a kind recipient. I don't know who the donor is of a tree.
Spruce Rock in Brightwood.
Thank you. But if you want to move forward, we can certainly plant a tree at the War Memorial.
You think you can get it donated?
I probably can't get the tree donated, but I can get the labor donated.
All right. Y'all want to plant a permanent Christmas tree at War Memorial? Seems reasonable. Why don't we look into the cost of that, and then we can kind of go from there.
Yeah, and like I said, we've agreed in the tourism committee to pay for it with those funds too.
Pay for the tree.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. All right. That's even better. Good. It's a good plan. Still, get us a cost so we know how much this fancy tree is going to be, and then we can go from there.
Will do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
members of the
There
board.
you go. Knocking things off the list. Yeah, hand it back to Pete, would you?
Nothing to report, Clay, just here to kind of listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Livingston or Brian? Go ahead, Livingston.
Getting a new UPS for the Treasury Department, or Commissioner of Revenue, excuse me, the one that wants the microphone. Sorry, I got a tickle in my throat. Animal shelter's getting new phones. The Segra people are coming over to Brian's World here tomorrow to terminate fiber for the upgrade of the internet speed. ERP stuff, working with them on their APIs and their web server certificates. That's pretty boring for you guys. Exciting for me. Office 365, still cleaning up people who had calendars in the old tenant. That's also very exciting. And we have ordered a cybersecurity test.
That's better.
Thank
Keep
you,
going.
Alan.
You're a musician, right?
We've ordered a cybersecurity intrusion testing that should start in the next couple of weeks. So everybody just keep doing what you're doing so we can catch you. That's it.
Good. Excellent report, Livingston. Brian? Apparently, you're supposed to hold it really, really close to your mouth. Go ahead.
We don't have all the fun things that Tracy and exciting things that, so maybe Stephanie and I can get a downtown.
No.
We got land use forms coming back right now. We're working those. Your microphone's off.
There we go.
That's
All right.
better.
I'll try. Sorry. We have land use forms being returned now. They're due November 2nd for revalidations and new applications. Working through that. We did discover a few items that we're trying to clean up with Stephanie so she can get the bills out. We're getting that worked through. Other than that, business as usual in our office. Any questions? I did have a couple of things, I think, later on in the agenda.
Yeah.
We'll review those here in a little bit.
Very good.
So the bills are going out through Avinity? Okay.
Yes. It's billed through Avinity, the new
Yeah.
software. Yep.
All right. Hand it to the next, Brian.
Okay, I did not get my forms in updated on to Al on time. I actually sent in the August ones, so I have looking in front of me now. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Hoover Ridge is, by all intents and purposes, done. It's been graded off. Fences are up. The makeshift fence should be coming down into the week, and the compound will be completely secure, mainly before the trick or trunk occurs in Hoover Ridge at the end of the month. So we got that done. Beautiful Run and Blakey. The new generators and propanes are hooked up and ready to go. We should have everything cut over and ready to decommission the old generators sometime in the near future. And Supervisor Dawson, I told you earlier that the ATS was going to be reutilized at Blakey. That's not true. A new UTS was to be put in. The surge suppression was reutilized. So we've got all that stuff. Everything's already installed up there, new alarm packages and so on and so forth. North End Site still on hold for right now. AFG grant, the final awards did come out. We did not receive it. I went through the entire list, and were some bigger localities that got very similar monies to what we were requesting, but for the most part, it was all between 100K and 300K and south of that number. I don't know if that large number we were requesting is what got us, but nonetheless, we have not received a rejection letter yet, but the list is complete by FEMA standards, what they're putting on there, and we have not received anything to say that we did win or did not win. Key stats last month, we total phone calls handled were 3,604 and total call service 1,023. And I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Questions on this? Will we reapply next year?
We're going to have to buy the subscribers prior to that. We have actually already ordered them. We'll probably take delivery of them probably in December. But I'm also looking at another grant because our current radio upgrade does not cover our paging system for EMS and fire. So I'm looking at that grant next year to cover that fund there.
Other questions?
Well, just so Brian, when does the Hoover Ridge tower get fired up?
They are looking right now at firing that up first before anything else to do some testing with the radios. The one key component is a multi-coupler to pretty much tie 4 or 5 different systems into those 2 transmit antennas. That is on back order with no idea when we're going to get it. The supply chains are insane right now with all this stuff. We're very fortunate that we got most of it ordered in the spring of 21, and it's been in storage. So we've got most of it, but the things like that we have to plan on for system design, we're having to order now, and we're running into some issues with that. It may come in quick, it may not. It all depends on how the supply chain works.
All right. Other questions for Brian? Thank you, Brian. Sheriff?
Good afternoon. Thank you for all the board support. I have one positive thing to say. The vehicles we talked about last year's budget finally showed up this past week. So that's 9 to 10 months for vehicles. Pretty much everything else we're holding our own. Any other questions you may have? Hopefully in budget season, we can talk about mental health. That's still a big issue. We're having to transport to Gaylock, Southwest Virginia, Northern Virginia. And hopefully we can discuss that with our legislators where now it went from 24 hours to 72 hours. We have to sit with somebody in the hospital and just no bed space available. So hopefully we can talk about that. So any questions?
Questions for the sheriff? Thanks, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Ms. Murray?
Good afternoon. Well, tis the season, that being tax season. The bills are a little late going out. We're hoping to get the real estate out by Friday. The vendor says that they can mail them out by Friday unless something unforeseen happens. As Brian was saying, they had a small hiccup with personal property, but hopefully I'll be getting those soon. But in case people are asking, just let them know we really are doing the best that we can. And the due date at this time is still December 5th. Been working on the ERP, been working on the pre-audit. That begins Thursday. And then the audit will be the first week, October 31st through November 4th, I guess it is.
Sorry.
And let's see. I think that's about it, but we're staying busy with everything that we have going on. Do you have any questions?
Anything from Ms. Murray? Thank you, Mr. Murray. All right, Miss Allen?
Thank you. We're coming off of a meeting from last night, and it was a very long meeting. It went on until 11 o'clock, but a very important meeting because the principals shared with the school board and the community their plans for school improvement. We are finishing up almost the first 9 weeks of school, and we've had a lot of data come in that shows us that we have a lot of work to do with all of our children to make up for the learning losses that they experienced over the last couple of years. But they do have a plan, and we were all very encouraged to hear them share that with us and the community. We had a lot of public interest at public comment time. We had about 20 people that spoke. And I think everybody had various opinions, but all of them expressed very well and very passionately and very professionally to tell us how they felt about some of the things that we were working on. I will throw a compliment to Ms. Montgomery, who came in and made a comment to the board, which made us all feel really good about the children and how much they had participated in the Constitution art contest that they had encouraged, the American Legion had encouraged it in all of our schools. So we had a lot of participation in that. And it was a long meeting, but I think a very important meeting, and also a meeting that people were able to express themselves. And I think you'll probably be reading about it in the paper. But I thought everybody did a really good job. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, questions from Miss Allen? All right, let's move on. We have a consent agenda. We've got minutes from 9/13/22. Any corrections, comments, thoughts, motion? What do y'all want to do?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Jonathan, have we found anybody for the Rappahannock Community Service Board?
We have put that back out for advertisement. Have you received any? No. So what I would say is between the advertisement, if there's any board members that know of anyone they would recommend, anyone in the audience, please tell a neighbor. There's a vacancy for the Community Service Board. If you would like more information on that, please seek me out. We can give you information. I believe they meet once a month. Twice a month. One of those is finance, though, Supervisor Dawson. So one's a committee. They talk about things. When you hear the sheriff talk about mental health, that's where the rubber meets the road. So if you want to be impactful for the community and maybe be part of the policy discussions that get to the board, it'd be a great opportunity for those who'd like to be involved. So if you know of anyone, send them our way. Hopefully we'll receive some applicants soon.
Thank you. Questions on that one? All right, let's go to new business. Mr. Fry, give us a financial update.
And just real quick,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I gave the board the handout. We will upload those in the packet. The purpose for today is Mr. Fry will occasionally give you some financial updates. You'll have a projected FY22 year in close, and then he'll go into a budget versus actual FY23. Mr. Fry?
Good afternoon. Hope everybody's doing well. Yes, the first schedule that we're presenting is a June 30, 2022 projection. It's unaudited. So of course, the numbers will be adjusted as the pre-audit team and the audit team gets in and we finalize. But basically, I just wanted to present to you what we have on the books as of this morning. And I'm going to try to be brief. I think Jonathan allowed me about 5 minutes. So I'm just going to quickly go through it. And then if you have any questions, you certainly can ask me. If you'll notice on the revenues, we had budgeted 46 million, almost 47 million, and we're getting in roughly 48 million. I'm sorry, 48.3. So we have about a 1.4 million increase over budget on our revenues. And of that increase, as you can see, some of it is the property taxes, other local taxes, and it's pretty varied throughout. I'll point out a couple of things on the intergovernmental state. There was a negative amount, meaning we did not receive everything that we had budgeted. And that's primarily the CSA pool money that comes in from the state because they did not spend as much money, they did not receive as much money. Then going on down to the expenditures, you'll notice that we have about 6.8 million in excess over our budget, actual versus budget, meaning we saved about 6.8 million over what we had budgeted. And again, I'll point out a couple of items. On health and welfare, there's about 1.5 million that was saved. Again, that is the CSA not spending everything that it had budgeted, as well as VPA of a savings of about 500,000. So that's a total of about 1.5 million. And then on further down, you'll notice that under non-departmental, we saved, if you will, 3.8 million, but actually what that is, we had budgeted for the ARPA funds to come in FY22, which they did, but we didn't spend anything of the ARPA funds. So therefore the expenditure of 2.1 million that's included in that line item did not get spent. In addition to the ARPA, there's about 1.7 million of capital funds in that line item that will roll over to FY23, but was not spent in 22. I probably should have pointed out, I'm giving you a presentation of all funds added together, not just the general fund. So this includes the schools, capital funds, and et cetera. So after reviewing the revenue and expenditures, we also spent a little less money, or I'm projecting that we'll spend a little less money on our transfers in and out. But basically, we're going to be adding about 2.8 million to fund balance, but that does include the ARPA funds, which will kind of set aside for the broadband project next year. So is there any questions on FY22?
Question?
Okay, the next page is just showing an update of FY23. And we try to do this quarterly, but I'm going to kind of warn you and the public. It's the same presentation. It's all funds, but of course it's the first quarter. So we don't have much revenue coming in the first quarter. All the real estate tax and the personal property tax bills will be coming in later in the year. So as you can see, under general property taxes, we only have about 2.25%, and that's primarily probably collection of prior delinquent bills. Also on the revenue, you'll see a couple of items where we are already pretty close to our budget. So I'm going to point out under permits, privilege fees, and regulatory licenses, we've already collected about 150,000 of the 220 for the whole year. So that's probably a good sign that we're going to, exceed that budget line item on the revenue. And then also a little bit further down, you'll see that under revenue from use of money and property, we've already collected almost $44,000 on our interest. And I did speak to the treasurer before the meeting, and that's just a simple economics. Everybody knows interest rates have went up. And last year I say last year, the prior year that was audited and FY22, we did not have as much interest income as we had budgeted, so we lowered that number in the FY23 budget. But then, lo and behold, the interest rates start going up, so now we're receiving more interest. And so that's another item where we've already exceeded our budget, and that'll probably grow throughout the year. On the expenditures, it's a little bit more logical, meaning we've been through 25% of our months, 3 months out of the year. And as you can see, a lot of the expenditure line items are falling around 22%, 23%, 25%, et cetera. So those numbers are more realistic of an actual monthly budget, if you will, for 3 months. But there are a couple of items also in the expenditure. If you go down to the non-departmental line, again, that includes all the capital expenditures as well as the ARPA funds being spent. So, of course, that's kind of sticking out like a thumb. We've only spent 56,000 of the 7 million. Bottom line, I think for right now, we're fine. We're trying not to bring too many budget adjustments to the board until we get further into the year, until each and every department can kind of settle in and see how the budgeted monies are being spent. So we're trying not to nickel and dime the board with, budget adjustments for everything, but there are a few things that we will be bringing to you, such as new positions, et cetera. So any questions on FY23?
Questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fry. All right. ERP project update. Jonathan, Mr. Shar.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. With you here tonight is our project manager, Mr. Tom Char. Mr. Char works for Cherry Beckert. If you may recall, earlier on in the ERP process, we had engaged and contracted with Cherry Beckert for a variety of services. Being that you have 3 ERP projects and the need to get it back on track, we went out for project management services. Therefore, that's how we found Mr. Char. Mr. Char has been involved with many ERPs, but I'm not here to plug or paid to say that about Tom. So we wanted to give the board an update, and the thought process would be at least on a quarterly basis moving forward, keeping the board apprised of how the ERP projects are moving forward. So with that said, there's a PowerPoint presentation that was in your packet, and we can go through that slide deck as you wish to have it advanced. Alan will do that for you. Mr. Char?
Great. Welcome.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me? Okay. So, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for having me here to present on ERP status. Very quickly, next slide, please. We're just going to kind of try to cover this pretty quick in about 6 slides here. First, so as he's trying to work that out, basically we have an agenda of, we'll just give you a very high level overview of the background, more importantly, the accomplishments to date, what's happened, where we are today, the remaining schedule, as well as next steps, and we'll have some questions and answers followed by you guys. Just a quick recap in terms of the background of the project.
Just advance it.
As Jonathan had mentioned, it's basically 3 separate projects involving 3 separate applications. First one being Tyler, you see there. There's a total of 8 different modules that are being implemented. Then there's Avinity, which is also within the Stephanie and Brian's group. And then a third application, otherwise known as Laserfish. You'll see there at the bottom, well, those first 3, let me just first say, is part of the phase 1 initiative that will be that is expected to go live on the 1st of January of 2023. And in that, and I'll get into the further lines of the scheduling for phase 2 and phase 3 there. And you can see that phase 2, we're looking at the permits and code enforcement. And then phase 3 with the remaining HR, payroll, and employee expense reimbursement, and vendor self-service e-procurement. Next slide, please. Accomplishments to date. I just want to first say thank you to the Madison team. They've been extremely helpful and they've been working really hard in terms of getting this thing back on track. Since then, we've done a series of, I would say, key activities. The first one being that the standardization of the chart of accounts, that's been finalized again, thanks to Bobby and everybody else here, Michelle, and just phenomenal work from them. Then we've done the finalization of the department codes, also very critical. And as we move through, we've revisited all 13 systems analysis and design documents that were actually given to us by Tyler. But since there's a period of things that have been going on in terms of changes. We went through all of those as well. In addition, we've gone through a lot of the configuration and the trainings, which, we're up to about 10 modules right now, but we have a little bit more to go, and I'll kind of talk in that next steps. We've completed some of the power training that's necessary, that's available leading up to the UAT that's coming up pretty soon, as well as we've updated the ERP module with a minor update so that we are still on track with what Tyler is rolling out, so we're not falling a little bit behind, and that we are trying to keep up with the latest version of ERP that they're doing. We've also done an initial test of the upload for the chart of accounts, and we're still going through that just to make sure that everything's flushed through and it's going to work properly. And on the other side, Avinity, we have gone live with that application. So that's a huge accomplishment as well by the team. Next steps going forward, we have quite a bit more work to do with Tyler. Again, we're going to, the key one that I do want to stress here is the first one here is the internal department change management discussions. I think discussions should start be having with all departments head to understand what's coming down the pipe, what's going to be involved. Obviously, that's going to lead into some of the training that we're going to start rolling out or having people participate in. We're also doing, we want to start understanding the third-party application integrations that are going to be done with Tyler. That's another one of our big next steps in terms of understanding there. As we begin to do that, we want to start planning for user acceptance testing, as well as end user testing and training. And then again, prepping for go live as of January. So we've got a busy 3 months ahead of us. On the Avinity side, we've already started looking at, the development of the API connection that's going to be Avinity to Tyler, which then helps them to seamlessly share information across the two systems. And then we're looking at also the implementation of Laserfish to Avinity. Next slide. Here's a high-level timeline, as I have mentioned. We're looking at doing the remaining of the power user training through early November, which then takes us into the user acceptance testing with the end user training starting in December with the go live of January 2023. Next steps, we're going to continue to prioritize in terms of the remaining activities. We have, like I said, quite a bit of training left. So we've got those already scheduled. As we go through that, then we'll have to start looking at UAT and start planning for that. Come mid to November, we will start looking at phase 2 and 3, as you guys saw earlier in the slide. We will start planning for that. Since we want to do that in November because it will be part of UAT, I think that frees up most of the folks that need to be involved with that. So I think it's right around a perfect time to start planning for those two initiatives. Open for questions and answers.
All the staff tells me it's a real simple process and very easygoing, and 6 slides probably is too much. It looks like we are moving right along. If you're going to go live on phase 1, January 2023, with your phase 2 and your phase 3 starting in mid-November, when do you expect those to kind of get to a point?
They won't be starting mid-November. It'll be the planning phase, right? Because most of the people will be consumed in their training and UAT through November and December. So we're hoping to, based on the schedule, hopefully start it late January, early February.
All right.
Given the amount of resources that's taken to do this, not taking away from their day jobs, we just want to make sure we're balancing that out.
Sure. So, Tom, quickly, we got identify all third-party application integrations to Tyler ERP. Is that something we missed when back in the day when we were signing contracts? Is this additional applications that we've had to engage with in order to make this work, or
No, these are other applications within the county.
within Tyler?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't think we missed anything, but yeah. I guess your presentation doesn't have anything to do with the budget, so
That would be for
Sworn, you're going to present where we are, the status on that at an upcoming meeting.
Yes, sir. I'm gathering all of the information. I'm pretty much done with it. I need to put it together.
Okay. So, Tom, I guess where Mr. Jackson was going was, so phase 3, when do you think we can push the button on that? Maybe July 1st of 2023, or you have any idea at this point?
At this point, I don't have an idea, but we will certainly work towards an aggressive schedule.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Other questions? Anything else? Thank you very much, Mr. Char.
Yep.
All right. Rappahannock Juvenile Detention Center true up. Ms. Warren?
I'll go over here so you can hear me better. So before you should have fiscal year 22 supplemental appropriation number 34 drafted. This is for the Rappahannock Juvenile Detention Center true up for fiscal year 22. A little bit of background on this. Madison County pays an estimated quarterly amount to RJDC over the course of the fiscal year. And once the fiscal year ends, Madison County receives a separate true-up invoice in the September timeframe. It's based on the county's actual usage of the center for the previous fiscal year. Historically, the county's usage rate has been low at 2.3% annually. And the county's annual true-up amounts have averaged about $68,000 per year over the last 4 years. The county received notification from RJDC back in August that Madison's actual fiscal year 22 usage rate was actually 8.7%, and that we would receive an invoice, true-up invoice in September reflecting a very large amount. And this fiscal year budgeted amount and estimated payments that we paid totaled $93,530. The actual usage amount totaled $347,308. Therefore, a true-up invoice came in at $253,778. So the staff recommendation is that the board approve fiscal year 22 supplemental appropriation number 34 in the amount of $253,778. And going forward, Madison County Finance Director, myself, I'm going to be attending all of the regular Finance Committee meetings at RJDC and monitoring the monthly population usage report that we get every month to determine well in advance what the county's annual true-up amount is going to look like.
All right. Question for Mrs. Warren?
I don't have. I mean, I'm used to this this true up, but for the public, I think the cost of these services are based on a usage rate, which is determined by the number of juveniles at the Rappahannock Juvenile Detention Center and the duration of time that they're housed there. So from year to year, we don't know what this is going to be. Now, as Ms. Warren has talked and Mr. Fry and Mr. Weekly have talked, we're going to look into reserving some funds perhaps somewhere to try to smooth this out. But we've been pretty lucky, I think, in the past on this.
Supervisor Yao or Vice Chairman Yao. Ms. Warren also pulled additional data that's in your packet on the screen. She has illustrated what past years you can see. So I think your comment about potentially looking at a stabilization fund, such as you have done for CSA in the past, would probably be a definite budget, perfect budget discussion when we get there.
Yeah, let's put that in the back of our minds for budget season.
But like we did with CSA, and it was our previous finance director that went in, was a member of their financial component of their whole board. You do anticipate by attending these on a regular basis, and they're monthly. Are they monthly or
There are
quarterly?
2 meetings. So there's like the business type of just, hey, we put a roof on, or here's a new wing. And then there's a separate meeting for finance committee. So as the board designated me to be the representative, I have designated Jennifer for the finance, or Miss Warren, excuse me, for the finance committee. Every month, yes.
And we do get a report every month that I'm going to be reviewing to look at what our actual
Go back
bill
up.
versus what actual usage versus
Right there.
billed usage. So I can monitor on a regular basis as we go throughout the fiscal year where it looks like the true up might land. So, and we get a report. This is a part of the packet that we received from RJDC. So.
Good. Good. Anybody else have questions, comments on this? We do have a supplemental number 34. What would everybody like to do here?
And Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the FY22 supplemental appropriation number 34 in the amount of $253,778.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, thank you. Building and zoning permit tech position, Mr. Weekly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And actually, I didn't pull it together for this packet, but you saw the revenue report that Mr. Fry just gave. You can see the impact, not only the revenue we're receiving at the building and zoning department, but you can imagine the workload. I've been here a little over a year, and that's given me adequate time to observe the volume of traffic and business being done for both. Well, there's several components down there. There's the building inspection side. There's erosion, which is inspections, but it's kind of its own thing because that program is administered by DEQ and is also heavily involved in plan review. And then you have the zoning side of the house. So based upon that observation, I strongly believe we need to add another permit technician position. Years ago, if you looked at both building and zoning as a combined department, you had a total of 6 folks. We've been operating the last couple years with 5, and I definitely can appreciate that fiduciary responsibility at that time. But those were times during COVID and kind of when things came to a halt for a little bit. We have definitely stepped out of that. And even we saw some building activity because folks were at home more increase. So I am asking the board to approve this position and the funding request that goes along with it. We're not asking for the full 12-month impact because it's 8 months that would be remaining. We anticipate from the time, if you were to approve, to advertise and hire for this position. So the 8th month impact is roughly $38,000. That's the salary with the fringe breakdown. And this is brought before you as a request of use of contingency funds. We have roughly budgeted for FY23 $297,019. I believe $25,000 of that was set aside for accumulated leave payoff in case folks leave and needed that. So adequate funding is there. I have not, Mr. Char had mentioned the upcoming training that will exist phase 2 for building and zoning, as well as Laserfish. Day-to-day activity coupled by any training that would go on top of that, I have concerns of being able to meet the obligations of learning that new software, but also provide an excellent service to the customers while trying to learn. So we don't want to see any drop of service to the citizens. We want to keep the same level, if not increased, abilities to provide more services to the public. So as with all that said, members of the board, I am recommending the board consider adding that additional position and funding that through contingency.
This is slightly out of order as far as adding positions on the basis that we normally add them during budget season. I do think, though, and Jonathan's brought it up to us multiple times at this point, that office specifically is a little slim. on staffing and with retention of staff and the whole process, giving a little bit more leeway where they can do some of this type of paperwork and get it all taken care of would be helpful for not just inside the office, but to the citizens as well. We know we've been sending Alan down there for several months now on a part-time basis to kind of knock out some of the work that needs to be done. I think this is probably something that's frankly pretty warranted. Anybody else have any comments on this, thoughts? What y'all want to do here?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the building and zoning permit technician position as requested by the county administrator.
I second.
And point of privilege,
Yes, sir.
do we need to, I believe I handed up a supplemental. Do they need to reference that supplemental number? Is that FY 23 supplemental number 3? I apologize.
It's coming out of contingency. We don't need to. Right. That's what I.
So if that's fine, then we're fine. Just recognizing you had that supplemental appropriation in front of you. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
You agree? Y'all agree?
All right, very good. Everybody's in agreement on it. Move on.
You need to vote.
Oh, excuse me. I
No.
apologize. Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Daniels, tell us about the open space agreement.
Good afternoon. Just make sure it's on. Now, I did want to come in front of you, just give a quick background on open space and let you guys review a proposed or draft agreement. Open space category. So there's 4 different categories in our land use ordinance: agriculture, horticulture, forestry, and open space. It's been in there since the late 70s when the ordinance was adopted. We just have never had anybody come before us to request to enter into an agreement with the county as open space. So it's been there. Just looking for guidance on what you guys would like in an agreement with the participant. I've borrowed this from a couple localities and made it similar to what I think Madison would enjoy. I'm assuming you guys will go back and review it a little better. A couple of the big pieces of information that I'd like to get is the length of time by code you can enter into this agreement, but for 4 to 10 years. Again, it's much like what we think of as like a conservation easement. It puts restrictions on what the person can do with the land. As you look through it, you can't have trash on land, no billboards, and heavy excavating buildings are restricted. There's a lot of restrictions that are built into this agreement. Once it's settled upon on the length of time that we want the person that participates to go into, they would record that at the clerk's office, and then it would be set for that amount of time. The only other or the other piece of information that I'd like to gather from you guys is, would you like for that person to come before you guys and make the request for the agreement, or would you like for it to be handled in my office, where they could come in, we sign the agreement together, they take it and get it recorded? Of course, they still need to make application, such as the traditional forestry and agriculture. They would make application and they revalidate every year, but they would enjoy the deferred taxes. There's a different rate. So our rate's $2,500 for open space agreement, versus right now it's $360 for forestry.
Before we go to Mr. Gregg on what he thinks of this agreement, other than just sheer embarrassment or inconvenience of them coming here, once you'll come up with the terms that are compliant with this proposed contract, Asking the board, I mean, all we have to, I mean, voting no on it is probably not going to work. So it's almost an automatic type of vote yes. I don't see a reason to have people come before us for that. I think the real question is does Madison County really want to be in the, and call it whatever you want, but it is an easement, an open space easement. And do we want to be involved in controlling easements? VOF, we know, does it currently, and that's far outside of our control, but it is a question for this board whether or not we want to amend the ordinance to not allow this or to. Mr. Gregg, have you reviewed this contract at this point?
In very general terms, I did basically the same thing Mr. Daniel did in terms of looking at what some other localities are doing. What I don't have the answer to is how easy these programs are to enforce. And I think that really speaks to your question, Mr. Chairman, that, if we pass this, do we have any means of enforcing it? But what I would suggest is, we reconsider this, in a month. That should give me some time. And, if it's something that makes sense, I will give a presentation, with pros and cons to the extent I'm capable of that, and let the board make a determination.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Daniel, is this time sensitive?
To some degree. I mean, applications are due November 2nd, but I don't think there's anything to say that they couldn't go ahead and make application in my office and then potentially have throughout the rest of the year to agree to the terms.
Okay. So one of the focus here tonight was definitely just since November 2nd is kind of when he's looking to officially take in those applications, but we wanted to get it in front of the board. So if you had any questions that can be developed tonight or forthgoing before the 30 days, as Mr. Gregg said, and we can take those questions and actually research and come back in 30 days for any comments to the board.
I can move it to, when is our next meeting in October?
2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Yes, sir.
I should be able to put something together in 2 weeks.
See what you can do. I think we all would appreciate it and get a little bit of education by it. The reality is the enforcement side of this. I mean, enforcement is, other than neighbors that are frustrated with each other and them calling and telling us about infractions, enforcement truly is not one of our strong suits. And it's on the basis that we just don't have the staff to really do that intentionally, honestly. It is a question whether or not we want to be in the easement business and whether or not we think there's validity to that.
Again, we would require them to revalidate annually, if they're willing to forge documents and that sort of thing. So similar to the rest of the land use program. I mean, we do ask that they certify each year, hey, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
You say it's a 4 to 10 year option on these things. Is that a variable option that the landowner opts into, or is that do we set it at 10 years is what we're going to do?
I think
that's that.
My understanding is, you set it, hey, we're going to do 10 years for everybody. So if you enter in this year, you're going to carry that out until 33.
You got questions down there?
Well, no, it's a tax break to do nothing sounds a little odd to me. That's basically what it is, right, Brian?
Sure.
So I'm gonna get a tax break for promising to do nothing with my land. That's exactly opposite of ag and horticulture and forestry and all that stuff. But it is what it is right now. And then, so just to be clear, so if somebody comes in and makes an application, because it's in our ordinance, the only thing we can apply to this is what would be in our open space use agreement. Is that right?
Correct.
I mean, I don't know. I'd still like to have somebody come and stand there and look me in the eye and say, and let me say, you want a tax break to do nothing with your land. Why? Why is that? I don't know. It just strikes me as
right. And in the upper portion, I
got a problem.
It talks about circling, I think it requests that you circle what type of use it's going to be under, whether it's
Yeah.
natural resources, public interest, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
A park or a recreational area. Again, there is concern, on the state level of, are these easements taking land away from farmers and forest, and lumber, timber people, and that's a whole different, level there, but I understand your comment there.
But it is. But that goes with personal property rights. The question is, and essentially, it's just people owning land. They're breathing, so I guess that's doing nothing. But we do need to know about the time period. And frankly, I think to go to Cardi's comment is, do we want these or do we not? And if we do not want them, we need to probably go through the ordinance process and amend it.
Right. And I am aware Augusta County just removed that classification from their ordinance 3 months ago. So they just did away with open space. They had a similar situation. Nobody had ever entered the program.
But now we're learning about it. So, Mr. Gregg, we'll see you next meeting. Yes, sir.
I did just want to touch on, I think I mentioned the Forest Sustainability Fund previously, where localities that participate in forest classification can make application to receive some funding back from the state. Just wanted to get direction from you guys that I should make application on Madison County's behalf. It's administered through a grant funding through the Department of Forestry. It's not a grant. It's a reimbursement of foregone revenue. They've started off this year with $1 million in a pot. There's 91 localities that participate in forest use. And so I would assume most of those 91 are going to apply, and you'll get the prorated portion of your foregone revenue. I project it to be $12,000 to $15,000. I mean, not huge, but hey.
What is the downside of this?
There's no real downside. I mean, I think you have to use it for education or natural resource, public education for projects related to outdoor recreation or forest conservation. I'm sure Parks and Rec could help you find somewhere, but there is no real downside to it.
All right. Do we want him to make an application for $12,000 to $15,000 and try to figure out if there's a negative that goes with this, other than having to spend it on education? Seems like a good thing to do. You have another question on the last
No,
one?
I'll pass.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. So you're getting the head nod, make application. Let's
Will do.
move on. We'll talk about this open space easement deal the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Now we're moving. Mr. Weekly, tell us about private medical transport request.
Yes. Mr. Barry's bringing that up. So I had a request come in front of me, or at least some information of a potential tenant for a realtor. The tenant is a private medical transport company. This company operates in at least another jurisdiction or locality in Virginia, that being York County. So we put some sample, when I say sample, some information that York County had. If this company is permitted to be allowed to operate in the county would have to pass a resolution recognizing them as an EMS provider, not a 911 medical service provider, but this is basically medical transports. Think of an Autumn Care, if you will, or transporting to doctor's appointments or different things like that. A medical director would have to sign off. So just how we have an OMD for EMS and how the former rescue squad had a medical director as well, similar fashion would have to occur here. I asked Sean to just review as well the resolution. While this would not be necessarily, the lease agreement would not be with the county and this person, that would be between the tenant and the realtor. However, we just want to make sure that if a passing of the resolution could seem like we are recommending one provider over another, it may or may not. We need to vet these things. Also, we have online, Chief Hillstrom could not be here today. He has some good personal health things he's working through, but he did say he can participate via remotely, and we do have him online. I asked him to reach out to York County, just to his counterpart, to get some feedback. Again, this is an item that I wanted to have discussion at the board level and really develop any questions you have so we can take those and either work or contact Delta Medical directly, or if we can do some more research with York County or anyone else that's necessary based upon your questions. And we have Chief Hillstrom, who has spoken to York County. We have him online.
Does anybody have any questions for Jonathan before we go to Noah?
Oh, mine are for Noah.
The only one I got, that just since you brought it up, you brought up that the chief medical person has to sign off. Is that they have to have their own, which I guess they do, but does our medical oversight have to sign off on this?
That would be a good Noah question. I'm sorry, I do not have that answer, sir.
Yeah, it's on your list. All right, then. Well, at least we're doing it then. Yep. Noah on there, Livingston?
Hey, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. Tell us about this.
Yes, I don't know Delta Medical well. To answer the last question, no, our medical director does not have to sign off. They're going to have their own medical director, which they currently have to operate as a licensed EMS agency in Virginia. I'm happy to take questions and provide additional research, provide information. I know they're out of Richmond, primarily a private wheelchair. Their bread and butter is in wheelchair transports. And I've personally not talked with Delta Medical, and they've not reached out to me directly. But Virginia 12 VAC 31420 is the state code that talks about the locality having to do a resolution for operation.
Other localities certainly have this, Noah. In other localities, does having this private sector ambulance service, does it work in parity with our emergency services and lessen some of the workload y'all have as far as just services rendered, or does it work well in complement to what we have already?
Overall, I would say yes. Life Care Medical Transports is probably one of the most well-known private entities. They have offices in Charlottesville and throughout Virginia. I talked to the chief of York County, who they have a resolution with Delta Medical, and he didn't have anything negative to report. The pros, if there's, a large scale event and how our resolution is written, we could reach out to them for backup. But we would have to be careful on our wording on that. The other thing to consider is, private transports stay out of autumn care or assisted living facilities. That will reduce our overall numbers and impact revenue received. But like I said, I'm happy to do further research and answer any questions.
All right, yeah, I've got, this is Cardi, Noah. I got two questions. You already answered my OMD question, but could you provide me with a scenario whereby Delta would be utilized? Give me an example. I mean, does a call go into you guys and y'all call Delta, or I'm in Edmond and I want to ride to Culpeper Hospital and I call Delta myself? I mean, how does that work?
Good evening, Mr. Yao. So the easiest way to answer that is we would have an established mutual aid agreement with Delta Medical. That would be similar to Greene County, Culpeper, et cetera, our surrounding localities. The second part of your question, yes. Anybody could call their 800 number and set up transport through them.
Okay, so then my other question was what would Delta's relationship with the county EMS be And I think you just answered that with a mutual aid agreement. I believe that answers that question.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay.
Through mutual aid.
That's all I got.
They would not be a DARA or designated emergency response agency. And I think the wording that York had in their resolution is appropriate for what we're looking for.
So Jonathan, do we have to have a lease with a private company to do this? I mean, can't they do this?
I want to be clear, the lease part, and well, let me back up. Staff is not bringing this to you as a recommendation for or against. It's a request. We want you to consider it because this would be the first type of business, if you will, to be doing this in the county. The lease would not be with Madison County. That lease is for office space, a place to report from, just like you see in paragraph 1A up there. Excuse me, somewhere in that resolution, it talks about they're responding from an office. So that office lease will be between a realtor and Delta Medical. Where the county is involved is that to be recognized as emergency medical service or provider, even if it's wheelchair, you need that resolution per code that's cited in that we're calling it sample resolution for them to do so. So they could have a tenant space, but they're not recognized as that provider until the counties would pass a resolution. The second part of that is they would need a medical director to sign off on that, which at one time when we had two separate agencies, the EMS and rescue squad, at one time they had two different medical directors. So it can be done, but those are the only steps that involve the county. That, and I just heard Mr. Hillstrom stated MOU. So MOU, resolution, and then the company would have to get a medical director sign off should the county want to pursue the allowance of this service.
Would the county have any kind of responsibility if there's something adverse happened, or would be on the hook for anything?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Gregg.
Ms. Hoffman, what these things are really designed for is Medicaid and Medicare reimbursement. If they can kind of establish themselves and they go through, I forget what the acronym stands for. I think it's Department of Medical Service, whatever that is. But this is all driven by those types of reimbursements and other insurance reimbursements. It's a little unusual for them to kind of locate in a rural area because we can be served by, an agency working out of Greene, Culpeper, or Orange County. It's just a matter of, this particular group apparently is interested in leasing some property in Madison, which is what would cause them to need something from this board. It is non-exclusive. In other words, we could sign 10 of these if we wanted to become the, transportation hub for non-emergency medical services.
Okay.
But that's generally how this works.
I guess I do have one more question. All right. I'm sorry. So, Noah, is this going to eat into EMS revenue?
Yes, sir. I did a brief calculation when I first learned about it, looking at our assisted living transports, as in Mountain View, Autumn Care, et cetera. It would be a roughly $50K potential impact to the negative. And I also think it's important to realize they would not be doing compassionate billing, which is what we do, as in billing insurance only. So that's something else I would recommend for consideration.
So my question, members of the board, is this something you would wish for staff to continue to pursue? If so, we've heard comments and questions. We can take that back upon further legal review as well. Talk directly to Delta. There'll probably be some interfacing too with the realtor just so they know our timetable. What's that?
Insurance companies basically just call these people for services.
Mr. Chief Hillstrom, did you hear Chairman Jackson's question?
No, sir.
What do insurance companies call, let's use them as an example. They're here in front of us. Delta 8 or whatever, Delta Medical. Do they are they contacted by insurance companies for the transport? I mean, it would appear that dispatch would certainly not call Delta Medical to go down that path.
That's correct. So the private transport industry, they have relationships with the insurance companies.
All right.
And we would not coordinate transports through the dispatch center. It would be a completely separate deal.
All right, I got one more question. So Noah, is this worthy of staff putting some more time into it and answering some questions and make a recommendation to us?
I think so.
Okay.
I personally, I think it would be a good idea for Delta Medical to maybe reach out to us so we can learn more of what their mission is, how we can work together. Like I said initially, I really don't know much about them at all. It could be a really good relationship, or it could be really bad. I just don't know.
Well, Delta is one thing. I mean, that's just a name brand. I'm talking about the overall
industry.
The industry, yeah, the issue. All right. So I guess, Mr. Chairman, hearing that maybe we have staff and Sean check into this a little further, and there's pluses and minuses to this thing, so we weigh it all out and decide later.
That's what we want to do. Let Noah add to the group of Jonathan and Sean, but I think it would also probably be Noah and Gavin as well, going down this path and seeing if we can figure out exactly if this is something that will work for Madison County.
Yes, and I will coordinate, and Chief Hillstrom and I will engage with the private service provider as well.
Hey, Sheriff, you still back there?
Yeah.
Can we get them to transport some of your clients?
I think that would be a wonderful.
Put them on the road for 72 hours.
I'm guessing that they do not have the skill level to transport in the, well, what I'm thinking of is the mental health, drives to the hospital. But I mean, that's a good point. And it could be that they do provide that, but sitting here, I'm not aware that they do.
All right.
No.
Check. The sheriff's nodding his head no. It's a good push. I know everybody would appreciate that, but yeah. Check into it, see where we can go from there.
Yes, sir.
All
Thank
right.
you.
All right. Moving on to some fun. Krugersville school property.
Yes, sir. You want me to go?
Well, why not? Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Due to the last action by the board was to move to table the rezoning request for the Krugersville school rezoning. I believe at that meeting you had indicated you would at least have it at your next board meeting. Having time to kind of digest where we're at, I had talked to each of you as well as talked to Mr. Gregg, and thought maybe the best approach to kind of keep conversation going, or staff can get direction from the board, is one, we included the latest proffers, which are in the packet and which were at the joint meeting, coupled with later on in your meeting at the end as a closed session to at least review the the draft amended and restated contract. And then the board, to please provide some type of direction to staff. We have received, and I have communicated back to a FOIA request that will be fulfilled no later than 3 p.m. on Friday. If it's available sooner, we will certainly do that. I have a meeting set up with Mr. Gregg early Thursday to just vet that packet of information, making sure we've included all or removed any attorney privilege items, and we'll get that over. We've also received some recent correspondence. I gave that handout to the board. I think it was a 7-page document that the kind of community input, if you will, on Krugersville and their concerns for the board to take into consideration. So again, tonight you have before you in the packet the proffers. As you very well know, proffers are for you to discuss and give direction to staff. They're not to negotiate at a meeting, public meeting, recognizing I know we have our Mr. Shapiro in the audience, but I do request that any guidance or discussion around proffers are directed to staff, and we can certainly take any desire of the board, Mr. Gregg and I, back to the proposed purchaser's attorney or themselves.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Weekly. We heard the other night, and we see the proffers that are put out here at this point. We listened to all the citizens. We know we've also received at this point at least one formal extra offer on this property. And it actually is two if you include this 7-page document that basically says that has a bunch of other things that we'll talk about, but they'll form a 501c3 and put $35K up for that. At least with the way I see selling this facility, is the county is subsidizing this real estate transaction with the intent to have conditions on it so that this building does not go just neglected and end up being more of a liability than it is currently. That being said, I don't look at it as a straight real estate transaction. The offer that we received, and Mr. Beto is here, for $27K, and then the offer from Mr. and Mrs. Gary proposing the 501c3 at $35K. Neither of them come with a plan. There has to be a plan to go with this, or we can go down the other path and do it as a straight real estate transaction if that's what the board wants to do. I see that as, to some extent, pretty irresponsible on the basis that we definitely know that the citizens of Kriglersville value that property, and it's just kind of what it is. The other one that goes with this is that sign. Actually, text Roger Barry, our previous facilities manager. That sign was ordered. The for sale sign was ordered from the company we got it from in 2018. It's been up 4 years. Every offer that we get can't just be followed up with subsequential offers in contrast to it. I don't think they're worth knocking out in any way. At this point, since we've listened to all the citizens from Kriglersville, are there other proffers that we want to shoot through our staff to Mr. Shapiro? Or is it something that we want to go back to the original business plan? I mean, how would y'all like to proceed here? We all know about the flooding. We know it's in a floodplain. There has been some assertions that the lead paint and the asbestos are insurmountable challenges. We have talked about enough old buildings to know that those can be encapsulated, and there's ways to mitigate any kind of disturbance of those. The foundation has been talked about, but I think that's not correct. That it is compromised. It has questions, but not compromised. Pollution. We know all about the noise ordinance and how that went so well for Madison County against the bear hunters. So noise ordinance, I'm certainly not in favor of. The other one that I think we need to put some clarity on, and I wanted to go ahead and release the contract, but I understand through counsel that we probably shouldn't do that. The buyback clause at this point isn't a buyback clause. It does not put us in jeopardy of millions of dollars of liability. It does give us the first option, which is certainly different. And I'm sure whoever gets the building, and if they do end up selling it down the road, what they invest in it compared to what the sale price is probably won't go hand in hand. How would you all like to proceed at this point? I was hoping we could actually talk about it for a minute and see where we go.
Yeah, well, I start, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I got a question for Mr. Weekly. You said the FOIA request, you used the term, would be fulfilled by October 14th, which is Friday, right? does that mean it'd be ready to go out?
Yes, sir. That would
On
be
the 14th.
received to the requestor by 3 p.m. on Friday. If it's available sooner, we will certainly get
Sure.
that to them
And
sooner.
how are you going to get that to the requestor? Electronic?
Through a thumb
Okay.
drive.
All right. So
Yes.
it'll be available to them on October 14th. Okay, very well. I am not in favor at all of considering any other offer until we put this one to bed. That's not right. It's not fair. We did that back in February or March when we had a couple of latecomers come in and do that. So, that's off the table for me. But for the rest of the board members, Mr. Chairman, I actually received some constructive input earlier today at my house via phone call that I think is worthy of discussion and consideration. But I'm unaware, did anybody else on the board, anybody get a call or something? So what I'd like to do is I suggest that I pass these items along to Ligon, our planner, and to Mr. Weekly, and let them take it from there, because this is some compromise type things that, like I say, I think is worth consideration. So I say I will write up the summary and then pass it along. And then I see no reason, with the FOIA request going out on Friday and our next meeting not until the 25th of October, I see no reason why these things that I'm going to pass along to Ligon can't be vetted and we be ready to rule on this rezoning at our next meeting. So that's my spiel.
Can you share the suggestions with us, or do you think it's compromising a potential contract?
I mean, I would rather pass them along to Ligon and let him talk to Mr. Spearby. I mean, I don't know. Sean, you have an opinion one way or the other?
To the contract, or are these just coming from a member of the general public?
Member of the general public, just like I asked for last week.
You can share those as you deem appropriate.
All right.
If you want to do it through our planning department, that would certainly be appropriate.
I would rather do that.
That's entirely your prerogative.
I would rather do that.
All right.
So here's my spiel. I'm with Cardi. If somebody wanted to buy the school before we accepted an offer from Felix, then they should have come forth. Like Cardi said, that sign's been up there since 2018. That building's been for sale. I don't think we have the right to keep telling Mr. Shapiro that he has to change his business plan. He has to do this because we don't like it. We don't do that to anybody else in the county. We don't tell, for instance, the lady that has the store, the possum store. We didn't tell her what she has to do up there or what she can have in her store. And I think we're just dragging him around. We need to, I think, get to a vote as soon as we can and decide. If it doesn't work out, then we can entertain some other offers. But at the current time, I think any other offers are just off the table for now.
Anybody else?
I personally still stand by my comment the other night that I like the original plan. But I just think it's bad business to enter into something and, think about buying a vehicle and somebody buying it out from under you. You'd be upset. I think the board needs to make a decision before we entertain any other plans, if we entertain any other plans.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a few comments. Some of them are specific to this particular purchase, and then some, I think, a general possibly change of philosophy on how we're handling this property. As I stated at the previous meeting, I'm opposed to this being an event venue. And therefore, I would be opposed to rezoning to M1. I don't think it's appropriate to have outside amplified sound in that community. And this is deviating significantly from the original proposal, which everybody seemed to be happy with. So that's where I'm standing right now on this particular contract. But I do agree we need to either execute or dispense with this offer before we consider anything else. You know, one of the things that's kind of got us in a trap with this is that we're trying to control the buyer and what they're doing. And we're doing that through a subsidized purchase price. It may be the best way to approach this, or this is something to think about. If this deal does not go through, why don't we just put the building up for sale at the assessed value, which I think is what, 145,000? Okay, put it up for sale at 145,000. Give it 6 months. If nobody wants to buy it at that, we tear the building down and we sell the property. And that will be the end of the Cricklersville problem for us. If this property has any value to either the community or a potential business prospect, then they would be willing to put that money up or something close to it. Sell it, fee simple. We don't make any promises. We don't put any restrictions. And I think that probably is the best way. I'm not sure anybody else agrees with me, but just looking at what we're trying to do, and this is why we're getting in these quagmires, we're trying to control the purchaser, which, you know, there's legitimate reasons for that. But, you know, we do owe it to Mr. Shapiro to follow through with the negotiations and vote up or down. So those are just my comments, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. I do agree that we do have an offer on the table. The suggestion's been made by council that we table for 30 days. If y'all don't want to do that, you want to just proceed at the next meeting, it's certainly up with the board. And I think it is to some effect, kind of the respectful way to deal with Mr. Shapiro, since he has a plan and an offer on the table. Let's go into closed session, I guess. At the end of the meeting, we'll talk about the contract, some of the proffers, and see where we go from there. That work for everybody? Anybody else have anything we want to say on this specifically? All right. All right. Leathers Lane position paper.
Mr.
Yes,
Chairman,
sir.
if I may, I'll turn it over to Mr. Gregg, but just for full transparency to the public and to the board, I hand you a revision. I believe there was some comment around paragraph 9D. Certainly, Mr. Gregg, when appropriate, can touch on that, but this is what the board asked, was for staff, or specifically Mr. Gregg, to go back and review and make edits to the position paper and present to you, and you make a decision if this is going to be the new adopted version.
All right. Mr. Gregg.
Very briefly, we've talked
Hold
about
on, hold on.
Leathers Lane.
Wait, hold on one second. We do have public comment at the end of the meeting. So if anybody wants to say anything about Cricklersville, that would be the time to say something. All right, please go ahead, Mr. Gregg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You will recall that we had switched to a policy where if there was unanimous consent, they could take care of any repairs up there. What has happened, so I'm told by several members of our staff and law enforcement, is that some people are making repairs without getting consent from others. Other people are being reported for doing the same thing that those other folks are doing. What we're doing is trying to go back to the original position, which was if they want to do anything on that road, they have to come in front of this board. This board agrees to let them do it, they can do it. If this board does not give them permission to do so, then they cannot do it. I realize this is very cumbersome for the board, but one of the difficulties up there, and we've tried every possible way to try to inspire some consensus up there, but it simply is not happening. This is a neighbor problem more than a legal problem. Maybe this approach
forcing them to come in front of the board will work this time. Now, you'll recall, we tried this earlier and it was somewhat problematic. The only thing I would suggest, out of fairness to other citizens having business before the board, that anything be taken up with regard to Leathers Lane as the last item of business. At least that way other things can be taken care of. Thank you.
This is not going to work well. It's going to work. That's just what it is. It's not going to work well. We're going to all have a lot of fun with it. Essentially, your only changes were to 9D.
That is correct.
And that is if the neighbors can't get unanimous approval on this, they come in front of the board on the agenda and make their case either pro or con, which I'm sure will hold court again like we've done so many times. The caveat that Sean mentioned about adding them to the end of the agenda, I think is right. The other one that is unlike the practice that we've done with the boards, with this board at least, is we've never really denied anything from going on the agenda. We know Mr. Barry over here and Mr. Wigby talk regularly by visits. If it gets to a point where it is every month we're talking about Leathers Lane, I certainly would hope that the board would remove that from the agenda. Coming in quarterly to do repairs on a road that we own the dirt of seems reasonable. Anything more than that, other than catastrophe, I don't think we need to address every month. Has anybody got any comments on the update to this plan? Y'all want to adopt? I think we need to make a motion to adopt this plan so that it is official and it is what we where we go. And how we
I agree,
deal
Mr.
with
Chairman.
this.
And I would only add, Mr. Chairman, just recognize the date of the position paper in your motion, please.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt Madison County's position on Leathers Lane dated October 11th, 2022.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, that's what we're doing with Leathers Lane. We'll talk about that next meeting, I'm sure. REC increase.
Okay.
Weekly.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Several months ago, and Alan's bringing up, if you'll go to the bottom there, it kind of explains REC's rationale. REC gave notice several months ago. I believe they were going to have 3 rate increases over the course of several months. The one you had before you, they gave you kind of an average residential member, and they used a 1347 kilowatt hour per month scenario. So it's projected to be about a 4.1% increase. I believe that should bring year-to-date of increases to roughly about 17%. They give their justification to do that to recover costs of infrastructure and investments. While we recognize they are very responsive in the community, we at least want to make the board and the general public aware of this latest rate increase. I would imagine customers have received that notice in the mail by now, but if not, at least you're aware of it from this meeting.
Any questions, comments, thoughts on this? All right, Estes House roof replacement.
Mr. Frazier covered that earlier, so I appreciate that. That was just letting you know that that roof has been replaced. It looks excellent. It has just pointed out, though, that the courthouse roof needs to be painted, because you can clearly see that now by the new roof at the Commonwealth Attorney Office. So that's the update that I had, members of the board.
All right. You want to start thinking about painting the roof as much as I want to talk about the courthouse in any way.
Yeah, we have some funding in maintenance for painting. We're kind of watching because we had, well, that roof was an unplanned expense. So we're kind of watching our P's and Q's to see if we can maybe get that roof painted in late spring, or if we're going to have to look to carry that funding request over in FY24.
All right. Other questions on this one? All right. No other information and correspondence. Public comment. Oops. Public comment. Public comment.
is this mic on?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Well, thank you for letting us speak. I'm Bill Gary. I helped draft the 7-page memo, which we worked closely with over 20 families in and around Kriglersville, where I and many of the folks that you've heard from before. And I'm grateful for the guidance and input I've gotten from several of you who have been very helpful. We've been working to try to bridge the gap and try to work with the community in a way that's efficient and productive. And to do that, what we really still need to obtain, and I'm sure you would support this, is getting the responses to the FOIA requests that we submitted on the Friday of the prior comment period. And the reason that's important is that the available information for the community to respond to right now is amorphous and it's vague and it's ever changing. And I think one of the important points I want to make here is that while there was a sign for sale on that school for a long time, there wasn't any movement for so long that I think folks got, I think our expectation was that that wasn't moving anywhere. And then there was a directional limited proposal to simply focus on the school and the inside of the school. And then somewhere that took a really strong expansion into many cabins and structures in the back area, which raised a whole panoply of issues. And we are still struggling through our FOIA requests. And I sent Jonathan a email that I would appreciate when you get a chance, Jonathan, responding to. I sent it to you Friday morning asking for me to actually be personally involved in pulling together the FOIA. I practiced environmental law for the last 35 years. I've been involved in many public records requests. My experience is that I could be of assistance making sure that we're getting what we need and we get it promptly. And what I specifically highlighted in my email to Jonathan is we want to see in the process how, why, and on what basis that this went from a project limited solely to the inside of a school, and then it took a detour and suddenly got into all these issues, which we've heard from several of you that you were surprised as well. But during that surprise period, we still haven't gotten the guts of what is required so that the public can submit comments. We need to know exactly who reviewed and how it was reviewed over the summer and how this expanded into cabins outside and the whole panoply of issues that we think haven't been resolved relative to that expansion. And let me just say, in addition to the request of the FOIA, we think it is in the public interest for you to make available to us the draft contract before you sign it. Because I can assure you, and I wrote this in the 7-page memo I sent you, that what was agreed to back on June 14th was grossly flawed. And I know you agree with us that you agreed in that to reimburse Mr. Shapiro for all costs in renovating a school. And I know you've worked to remedy that, but that should never have been there. And what that tells me is that, I think I'm sure it probably tells you, is that that contract was written by Mr. Shapiro's attorney with no meaningful review by counsel, because you have an excellent one, and I can't believe he would have let that pass. I also, in the document that I prepared and submitted this morning, highlight that in that June 14th contract, you inappropriately, unethically, and I believe illegally committed to provide for the $25,000 payment by Mr. Shapiro to give him whatever zoning he needed for his intended use. That directly conflicts with Virginia law, and I've cited a case in here, but also which is fundamental principles that it is unseemly for a county to take money under a contract and promise that it will deliver the zoning that they want. That will be struck down. And the last thing we want to do is undermine the credibility of this group. We want to work with you. That is our goal. However, if this continues to unfold in a provocative way, you have a track record here that is going to hurt you. It's going to hurt the integrity of the board. It's going to hurt both in the courts and in the press. And I think you should look closely at the case we cite to and explain to me how you're going to justify in front of a court that in Madison County, apparently, if somebody's willing to pay enough money, you're willing to give them whatever zoning they want and let them do it. because that's why there's a prohibition that counties can't do that. You can't do contract zoning and then create a spot zoning. And by the way, make it industrial in the middle of an agricultural area. And I think that the better approach is to work with us. We want to work with you. Don't alienate us just because it's taken us a while for more than 20 people to come together. And I certainly support everything that Mr. Jewett said. I mean, we are now better organized. We're better structured. We're making reasonable requests. We're not talking about the things that were talked about last week. We're talking about, please give us the information so that we can assist as a partner, work together, help understand where things went off the rails, get them back on the rails. But let us participate in the contract, because I think one of the tension points that we keep seeing here is you guys are in a tough spot. You're trying to dispose of property that, I get it, it's been a headache for a long time. And then you have obligations, legal obligations, ethical obligations to follow the zoning ordinance process and procedures. And what I see, and I think what the public sees and what the court would see, is that you're bending the rules on the ordinance process that should be applied because you want to bend to help Mr. Shapiro. And I think Mr. Jewett said it well from a similar vantage point, that the compromise right now, wearing those two hats, is trying to sell the school and trying to do it in a way that complies with your requirements it's not working, and it's breaking, and it's putting you in a tough spot. And we would like to help you to get out of that spot. And we're asking for time to do that. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
How dare you come in here and accuse us of taking $25,000 to change zoning? I hope you can approve that if it comes to that, because that is absolutely nothing but a lie.
Well, you read the case that I submitted and attached.
I don't care about your case. I care about what you're accusing us of. Thank you.
All right. Other comments? Thank you, Mr. Gary.
Thank you.
Other public comment? Yes, sir.
I'm Jim Howe. I just had a few thoughts I wanted to share. You know, I read the current proposal for Mr. Shapiro that was in the agenda packet, and I actually was pleased with some of the things I saw. I think that the board and Mr. Shapiro have responded to a lot of the concerns. There are issues that simply are not going to go away, like noise and so forth. But I think that's come about because we have had, as a public, the opportunity to give input into this process to try to shape it. And so following along with what Mr. Gary just said, I think to continue that is a good thing. And in fact, I just learned from Mr. Yao that there's something new, but it sounds like we're not going to hear about it until the next board meeting when everyone is pushing to make a decision. That, I find that difficult. The community is asking, you know, we want to make this work if we can. So you have to talk to us and let us know ahead. You could share it now or not, but we want to be involved to reach the best decision. And I think you should help us. So I'd like to put that out there. I would also like to say something that really bothers me about this process. I understand it if Mr. Shapiro is saying, look, I can't make this work by doing the school. It's too much money up front and it won't work. So I need these other things. Therefore, I need the zoning. Okay, I got it, right? But that means that may be the best offer, because somebody isn't going to say, I got $5 million. Yeah, I'm going to just do the school and it's all great, right? But there's a problem with that. In doing this zoning, it sets a precedent for Madison County. It says, look, this is going to be an event venue, at least part-time, right? Not the hotel and so forth, but there's going to be events, and that's part of the problem here. If Madison County says, well, we're going to get around this 10-acre minimum by rezoning, that sets a precedent. We all know precedents become the norm. That's the way it is. And if you do this once, what's going to prevent you from doing it again, right? You're going to have to fight that battle again to 3 acres to whatever. So I think you need to think long and hard about setting that precedent. And then lastly, if this, I agree, Mr. Shapiro needs to be, a decision needs to be made. But if that decision is not in his favor, I agree with Mr. Jewett 100%. I think the approach that he just proposed is a good way to move forward. Thank you.
Other public comment? Other public comment?
Hey, everybody. I won't take much of your time, but I do want to put the record straight. It was never our perception, and I know it was never the board's perception, that anything in our original contract would tie their hands in regard to zoning. And I also, to be honest, don't really think it was y'all's perception either. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here petitioning the board as exactly appropriate to make a zoning decision with which you would agree. I think this is a legitimate process, and I've very much appreciated the opportunity to be a part of it and to hear from you all and to respond and learn from you. I very much appreciate what you said about seeing the remnants or impacts of our conversations in the proffers, and I think that's very true, and that's very much what we have tried to do. I do, just for the sake of the record, want to put to rest some rumors and I think some confusion. I have read online a number of the folks signing this petition and pressing for action or inaction, as you want to describe it, are mistakenly under the impression that I have some plan to tear down the school, which, as you all can attest, is the furthest from my plans, and either at the beginning or now. Now, I will say of the plans at the beginning, an event venue was always central and was always highlighted in the materials and the conversations. This is, I think, a cornerstone of making the school a successful business. That being said, I'm always open to conversations with the neighbors as to how we can make it work better for you all and work better for the community. I think we've done dare I say, a good job of having those conversations thus far. And I know they'll continue, and I want to say they'll continue after the zoning and the proffers are all addressed. If we are lucky enough that Madison County should continue down the path that is outlined in our contract, we intend to be involved in this conversation as often as you guys are willing to have it. The proffers set sort of a minimum standard of behavior and a minimum standard of delivery, but neighborliness goes far beyond that, and that neighborliness mandates listening and it mandates compromise, and that's the attitude we hope to bring to this project and to our stewardship of this important Madison County asset. So thank y'all for being a part of it. I did also want to address the listing of the Kriggersville Historic District has nothing to do with Shenandoah National Park. It does not pave a way for the incorporation of Kriggersville into the park. Nothing in my power could do so, and I want to put that rumor to rest as quickly as possible. I very much appreciated Mr. Dawson's comment about buying a car and having the deal sort of snaked out from under you. It also is not lost on me. It's almost like other bidders coming in with the mechanics report that I commissioned. I have, at the urging of you all and at the urging of the public body, made a great deal of my internal planning documents, my septic report, what have you, public for your perusal to include you guys in this process. It does rub a little bit the wrong way that these very expensive tests that I have paid for and commissioned would be, used to inform a contrary bid when we are, not at an appropriate point in the process to do so. And if we were, I wouldn't have been able to make those materials accessible to you. So I just wanted to put that out there. I very much appreciated the comments both by the board and by the room, and appreciate the opportunity to work with you all throughout this process. It's been a real pleasure, at least 95% of the time.
All right. Other public comment. Other public comment. All right. Yes, sir. Ms. Howell.
Ashley Kyle online.
Yes, go ahead online. Go ahead online.
Hi board members. I just wanted to echo Mr.
Who is
Shapiro's. Hi, this is Ashley Kyle. I
Thank
am Mr. Shapiro's attorney. I just wanted to echo Mr. Shapiro's sentiments. We look forward to receiving this new information that was obtained today and to evaluating it and discussing it with the planning staff. And I just want to echo Member Hoffman's reaction to what was said earlier. The rezoning is a contingency of the contract. It was never the intent for the county to promise anything to my client.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Howell.
Just the last comment. We just saw your revenues and expenditures for the year, and you put $250,000 for an unexpected expense with regard to neighboring county. That'll take the school down, no problem. So I think you have it in the budget to do that if it needs to be done. And to keep it there for sentimental value makes no sense. So I just want to put that as another option. Thank you.
All right. Any other further public comment? That includes online.
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah, I have a comment. Hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. My name is Samantha Gary. I have been in this area for a long time and participating in the community. I just wanted to make a couple of points of clarification because I know that you all didn't get the letter that the community sent to you this morning with enough time to really take it all in, and because it has been carefully considered on our end, and there seemed to be a little bit of confusion. So I understand you need to go back to it and look at it more carefully, but I wanted to clarify. In that letter, we were very clear about what we wanted from the board and what we were willing to offer in terms of our cooperation with the board. And in that, we were operating from the understanding that the current contract is now behind us and that you are working on a new contract. And we've outlined very specific things related to the problems we have with the utilization of the site, regardless of what contract goes there. And we've made a proposal for a good governance model that is used by many government organizations when they're selling public properties, which is an RFP process, which the current developer, Mr. Shapiro, would be certainly able to participate in, should we come to that point, but it would get everyone sort of a clear idea of what is expected in the sale of a public property to a private entity, which is not the same thing as dabbling in somebody's business, because, for example, the Possum Store was a private property that was then sold to a private individual. And what we're talking about here is a public property that has been utilized for the public good. And the intent of the board is to ensure that as it is transferred into private use, that it would also have some sort of public benefit. And that is what we, I think, are all trying to figure out here together. And there seems to be a disconnect between what you think is a public benefit and what the community thinks is a public benefit. And that is really at the nut of this, of how we need to work together. Furthermore, the other part of our letter, we were talking about this Three River Community Alliance that we are working on pulling together. We are not making an offer to buy the property in that. What we are doing is pulling together the community for now and the future that would be able to work with whoever does buy the property and the Board of Supervisors now and into the future to help chart a course so that we can have a more organized and proactive communications and set a sense of partnership with all of you. And what I hear about when you say, well, nothing's happened since, the sign went up in 2018, what I'd say is a big reason that not much happened is we've had quite a bit of change in our area. We've had 4 or 5 families come in since that time, many in the last 2 years during quarantine and a pandemic, who have invested in the community since that time, including the Spoots. So, it's like that is sort of history. It's not our fault that we didn't have a big idea. I don't think most people are prepared to take on a brownfield site, and to that end, nobody knew that. Nobody could have envisioned that something as outrageous as the most recent proposal would have ever been under consideration. So I think there are really good reasons why the process has gone like this. We know that the county has, that all of you have sat through many, many hours of discussion on this, both in private and in the public record. And now we are at a new place, and we are a new place that has to consider the FEMA floodplain issues. That has very concrete ramifications that will tie both the county's hands, the community's hands, and any purchaser's hands. We have issues that have to be resolved. And so what we're trying to do is get to the table. We've offered that we could have just a couple of us who can sit down with a couple of you and hammer this out, because this thing that we're doing, this like every 30 days and everybody like having these fire drills, is frustrating you and it's frustrating us. And we think we can do this better together so that there's something that benefits everybody, and that you don't, it seems to us that your obligation isn't to Mr. Shapiro. Your obligation is to the community, and the community is here now, and we want to work with you to have something that really works for the community. If Shapiro is involved, fine. If he's not involved, fine. That's not the issue. So, we really are just pleading with you to not keep saying, okay, well, we're going to vote on this in 30 days. We all have jobs and families and things that we're trying to do, in addition to addressing your concerns. And we're spending a lot of time trying to pull together to try to understand this and come up to speed on it. And we just need to know that we're not going to go from where we were back to where we were after going through all this effort. So please read what we said. Please read it carefully. Please understand that we are, offering our hand in goodwill here. And we want to just take a step back so that the needs of the community are truly incorporated into this process, which they have not been up to this point. Saying you're listening and actually acting on that is essential to this process. And I cannot listen to Mr. Shapiro tell me what it means to be a good neighbor anymore. If he wants to be a good neighbor, then he's going to have to sit down and go through this with all of us too, because what happens to that school happens to our community, and we cannot afford for this to go the way that it's been going so far. So we're asking for reset. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment? Anybody else on there, Livingston? Any other public comment? All right.
I got something. One
All
more
right.
thing.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so Mr. Howe, and for the public out there, for me to not divulge what information I got this afternoon, which I was hoping that other people are gonna get, is you need to understand how the process works for a special use permit. If this were a special use permit, we as a board could sit here and dictate what the proffers or conditions would be. For rezoning, we cannot. And I do not want it for me to do anything other than send this to the planner who will get it out to everybody. I didn't want to get into the back and forth and take the chance that this would be interpreted as this board telling Mr. Shapiro what conditions or proffers he had to put in there. Okay, that is my reason for taking my stance, and I'll stand by that. I gotta tell a quick story.
Yeah, sure.
So this past weekend, I go to Richmond. Well, first of all, I go to Richmond for my nephew's wedding. He wanted to get married in Madison. There was no venues available in Madison and nowhere for the wedding party to stay because a lot of them were fraternity brothers of his from Radford, and they're all over. You know how that goes. Nowhere to stay, no venue available. None of the wineries or breweries wanted to shut down for a Saturday afternoon. You know, understandable. So he does it in Richmond. So we all go down there, and this is a true wedding venue outside of Richmond. And the wedding started at 4. The outside music was the dun 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 dun, you know, that stuff, whatever that is, for her to walk down the aisle, and then something else for her to walk out. Everybody walked out, and they head to a 90 by 45 foot tent where all the food and the music and the booze is. And it was a quick exit to that tent for everybody. So I'm sitting there, I was like, I got to talk to this guy, see what's going on. This is all he does. He had a big house and he used to do an Airbnb, but he didn't pay for it. So he had to do some events. So had to have weddings in there to supplement his Airbnb. So anyhow, the thing started at 4. Everything's in a tent. Music ends at 10. Over, done at 10. I don't know what the kids did. They all went somewhere else. But so I'm talking to the guy, and I said, okay, so in practicality, I'm telling him my story about up here. I said, let's talk practically. He puts his tent up the middle of March, and he takes it down the middle of November. So March, April, and most of May, it's too cold for people to do it outside, so they have the tent. And then nobody wants to be in a tuxedo and a wedding dress in July and August. So you're not going to have them outside then. They're going to be inside in a tent or inside the Kriegersville school. For a number of reasons. It's too hot, it's raining, it's too cold. I mean, we had to pull the flaps down about 6:30 on the tent the other night. Flies. I mean, you got the food out there. If you're outside, the flies are all over the food. So I'm thinking, practically speaking, if he had a wedding every weekend, which is not going to happen, how many of them would even be outside? I mean, the music's inside, the food's inside, the booze is inside. People spill out outside to whatever. But, I'm thinking, practically speaking, how would this thing work? So, you know, so I'm talking to the guy, and that's what he does. He keeps that tent up the whole time. So unfortunately, Madison did not get the benefit of probably, I don't know, $25,000 wedding. And the fact that, you know, Scott Elliff up at Ducard, you know, you think of all the folks that something like this would support, you know, the caterers and the vineyards and the supplies of all that stuff. It just goes on and on. And I talked to Mr. Howe yesterday, and we had a good conversation. And do I need to explain the two things that we talked about yesterday about why we needed to go in industrial? Does everybody understand that already? You don't understand it. Okay, you got it. Okay, well, never mind. Well, then he goes, you know, what economic benefit has this got to the county? And I said, I don't know. This goes on pretty deep, but so I called Tracy this morning. You know, I'm crunching a few numbers and whatnot, and I figure this probably going to bring, I don't know, probably $100,000 into the county in a year based on his business model and plan, but then we send Mooney up there twice a week to mow, once or twice a week to mow. The sheriff's department's got to go up there on a regular basis to make sure the county property is secure. And like I say, and then you add to that a pun intended here, this tide would float a lot of boats. Get it? Okay, never mind.
Very poor.
Flood then would float a lot of boats. But, you know, you go on and on about how much it would create. So that's what I was thinking about when I was sitting down there listening to terrible music while all the young people are dancing like crazy. Thinking about how I wish this was bluegrass, like we would probably have up here. But anyhow, that's showing my age. I was showing my age, but I was also, and there was tons of Madison people there, of course, right? That traveled to Richmond. I couldn't find anybody that couldn't understand why we wouldn't want to do this. So anyhow, that was my experience this weekend, except for the fact that the Channel 29 News, and I wrote to whatever her name was, that did the report on Crigglesville. She sends me an email Friday morning at 8:30, about a half hour before I'm leaving to go to my nephew's wedding, and asked me to be interviewed for the Crigglesville situation. And I said, I'm sorry, but I'm getting ready to leave in about a half hour to go to Richmond to my nephew's wedding. I said, if you can't, if you don't talk to somebody else before I get back, I'll certainly, entertain it then. And then at the end of the report on Channel 29 News, it says, we reached out to all the supervisors and they declined. I didn't decline. So I let her know that this morning. She goes, oh, well, I only have a minute, and it's easier just to say that everybody declined. Okay. That's it for me, I think.
All right. I'll throw in, I guess, my 2 cents real quick. I think everybody up here has listened to the public. That's why we're at this point. We would have voted on it last meeting. It would have been a lot easier. I'm not in favor of putting it up for public auction at all. Y'all sit here and say how, and it's not just this group. That's the thing that's the craziest. There is a lot of Madison County that went to Crigglesville School that is still here. So it's not just this group that gets to say what happens here. We are listening to you. We've listened to you, and I'm glad to have you as neighbors in the community. If you've been here a short time, you've been here a long time. Glad to have you. It's what makes Madison kind of special. We've been doing this for a long time. I think I'm on here 9 years. Somebody told me the other day, said, they'll never elect you if you vote on this again. That's okay. No big deal. It won't bother me a bit. I can sit out there on my reservation and I'll be happy as can be. I'll drive past Burglarsville, drive all over this area and like it like I do. Mrs. Hoffman, several members of the Planning Commission, I think some community members were on a committee like 2 years ago on this. We've held multiple public hearings. Every time we get all, like I know about the asbestos. I've read the reports. Benny Hurt said that the water had gotten in the school. Apparently he's the only one that remembers this because everybody that I talk to in Madison County says the water goes in front of the school and goes behind the school. We know it's a shift in his business model. We know it will influence being direct neighbors of where you're at. I do proposals all the time that never come to fruition. Never. Just part of doing business. If this doesn't, that's okay too. We keep going down the path. We keep asking. I looked on the county website earlier because the sign that we posted in 2018 that's been up for 4 years, sadly, that RFP, there was an RFP put out in 2019. We were looking for people to make appeals to us. There has been several appeals to us. One, the man had a track record. Another man came to us and he wanted to put up a 8-foot tall berm, 20 feet wide, all the way around the property. He told me the county administrator was going to give it to him and the board of supervisors were idiots. He didn't know who I was, so it worked out really well. And I just continued going down that path. We've seen some bad proposals. We know, like Cardi talked about, the event venue in the Hebron Valley that had a special use permit. That's an important part of Madison County. Burglarsville is as well. It cites this 7-page report cites the infrastructure. I've heard that a bunch of times. The Cresseray 231 was never going to be able to support the infrastructure of Cresseray. It doesn't seem to impact it in any way. I understand there was like, a 30 or 45 minute wait to get into Graves over the weekend. They came through there. They've got, 2 more weekends. We've got the bike race. Pretty much everybody in Madison, other than Barry Penholler, likes bike riding. I mean, it's just, the infrastructure's there. We know it influences. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We're listening. We'll see. If we're not trying to affect anybody in the negative way. We're trying to bring something to Madison County that will be an asset to Madison, and not something that is to the detriment of Madison. Multiple farmers have asked at this point, "Oh, we'll pay you for it. We'll just knock a hole in it and we'll pack it full of hay." Yeah, that's an offer. That's an offer. I think it's going to fall down, and then we're going to really have a real problem with a big pile of bricks on the side of a beautiful part of our community. We're listening. We'll continue to listen, and that's kind of where we're at. Anybody else got anything to say about this? All right, we do need to go into closed session. Thank y'all for coming.
I move that the board convene in a closed session pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A29 for discussion of the award of a public contract involving the expenditure of public funds, including interviewers of bidders or offers, and discussion of the terms or scope of such contract where discussion in an open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
A break.
Yeah. Do we need to move?
Bring me back.
Piss me off.
Yes, hopefully for me.
I need to hear the
That's a lot of action.
Uh-huh.
I don't know the scoop.
Oh, you don't know everything behind this? Yeah.
The last thing I knew. That's the only thing I knew.
Right.
I see you.
This conference is no.
Wonderful attorney. How could you do that? How could you miss the things that that wonderful attorney? I'm so disappointed.
Yeah, well, I can't say I blame you.